Great. So welcome everyone to our Women's Earth and Climate Action Network event, Indigenous Women Resisting Extraction and Building a Just Transition. I'm really glad to welcome you all here, those of you who are at the UN Permanent Forum this week, and all of you from our community in New York City, and to all of those who are tuning in on our live streams. This event is being held during the 25th session of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues and on the eve of Earth Day. My name is Osprey Oriole Lake, and I am the founder and executive director of WECAN. And today we're going to be hearing from an incredible group of Indigenous women leaders who are fighting every day to protect and defend the earth, the sacred, the climate, and their rights and communities. And for those of you who have been inside the United Nations over the last few days, you know how serious everything is. We don't need to hear it just from the United Nations perspective. People living in marginalized communities are being impacted all of the time. So it's a very serious time that we're gathering right now for these discussions. We will be hearing about frontline struggles today, as well as the women's visions and strategies for shaping a healthy and equitable world. And we're truly honored to organize this event with all of these presenters. Before I get started, I wanted to also thank our volunteers in addition to the interpreters. We can't do this without our volunteers, and a special shout out to Harriet Sugarman from Climate Mama, who's always helped us. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you so much. So yes, we're glad to be here with you during the UNPFII so that Indigenous women's leadership, their solutions and calls to action can be heard and visibilized. There'll be two panels today in which we'll learn from Indigenous women leaders globally on the impacts of interlocking crises in their communities and how they are implementing solutions and practicing traditional knowledge systems, upholding Indigenous rights, and advancing policies of care, democracy, and climate justice. So there'll be these two panels, but we do have a few dignitaries who might pop in from their leadership role at the UNPFII, and I just wanted to note that because we're going to stop everything and let them come to the podium and have their remarks and leave because they're on very tight schedules. So we'll manage that as it comes up. As we face accelerating climate chaos, dangerous authoritarianism, and ongoing attacks on human rights and Indigenous rights and democracy around the world, the protection and full realization of Indigenous rights and sovereignty is not only a matter of justice, it is a primary condition for a livable and just future for our planet and communities. For generations, Indigenous peoples have been on the front lines defending forests, water, biodiversity, and traditional knowledge systems that are key to climate and governance solutions. Yet these vital defenders continue to face violence, criminalization, and the violation of their rights, including the right to free prior informed consent, or FPIC, which you probably know about, and if not, you will be hearing a lot about that. To support the advocacy for Indigenous peoples' rights, WECAN is circulating a policy brief throughout this UNPFII session called Indigenous Rights Are Vital to a Healthy and Just World, which we are delivering to governments with a list of strong recommendations, because we really can't move forward in this interlocking time of crises, a time of polycrisis, without recognizing Indigenous rights and fighting to implement them. We're talking about Indigenous people protecting the last of our water, the last of the forests, the last of the biodiversity, and all the knowledge systems that come with their knowledge and those lands. So this is a time we really need to stand up and work with our Indigenous allies and help them in their struggles. And I think it's good to ask, how can we connect more deeply in our defense and protection of Mother Earth? Clearly, we can't win these struggles on our own, and so we need to strengthen our relationships and efforts together. And that's one reason we're hosting this event tonight, so we can all connect at a much deeper level for the times that are coming. Today, we are hearing from Indigenous women who are drawing a red line to protect and defend Mother Earth, all species, and the very web of life. And we are here to stand with them. Do you agree? Yes. Yeah. Thank you. And speaking of the web of life, let us also invite our relatives to be with us today. The trees, the oceans, the rivers, the mountains, and the animals of our beautiful planet. And we thank the Lenape people as we are in their homelands here in Manhattan on their territories. At WECAN, we are dedicated advocates of rights-based approaches to solutions, from Indigenous rights, women's rights, immigrant rights, to nature's rights. This is more important today than ever as we face attacks on the very rule of law. And it's important to highlight that violence against the earth is directly linked to violence against women. Patriarchy, colonization, and capitalism are all based in power over and exploitation of women, the land, Indigenous, Black, and Brown communities around the world. And this is what we are challenged with and we are going to fight against. Indigenous women globally are making a significant difference in changing our current destructive trajectory. And we need to support the power, leadership, and visibility of these women at every level of decision-making and funding and resource opportunity. And WECAN has been very honored to be in the territories and lands of many of the presenters today, advocating, taking action, and standing in solidarity with our sisters as they lead efforts to protect their homelands. In each of these ongoing struggles, the women's voices shine boldly with dignity, wisdom, love, and strength in the midst of great challenges. Women's voices continue to rise, saying, colonization and imperialism must end. Sacrifice zones and environmental racism must end. Violence against women's bodies by extractive industries must end. The desecration of Indigenous sacred sites and violations against Indigenous rights must end. The destruction of the earth and water must end. The women are offering many solutions, and one that is so important to us all is to remember our inseparable connection to Mother Earth. So this is a solution. Indigenous rights are a solution. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll get started with our panels. Thank you. So let's go ahead and have our first panelist come up. We're going to invite Julie Hornick up, and once you're settled, I'll introduce everyone. So Julie Aeisatu, if you could join us here. And we'll also be having Josefina Tuki, please have a seat. And then also we will be having great-grandmother Mary Lyons.
Just one more thing. When people, so the way the equipment works is like when you put the headphones on when you need them and you remove them when you don't. So if someone is speaking in English and you speak English, then you don't need them. You remove them. If someone is speaking Spanish, you put the headphones on. So de la forma en que funciona el equipo es que usted se pone los audífonos cuando los necesita. O sea, si alguien está hablando en español, usted no los necesita, así es que se los remueve. Si alguien está hablando en inglés, los va a necesitar, así es que se los pone. Okay, gracias.
Thank you, thank you. So I'm going to introduce the speakers, and then we're going to show a short video that will be part of the opening presentation. So first we're going to be hearing from Julia Hornick. She's from the Ponca Nation. She's the Global North Indigenous Organizer for the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, GARN, on the Indigenous Council. She's also the Plains Organizer for Movement Rights. And we're very honored that she is also project coordinator with WECAN from Turtle Island, USA. So welcome, Julia. Then we'll be hearing from Aeisatu Bouba. She is from the Cameroon Indigenous Women's Forum from Cameroon. Thank you so much for being with us. And then we'll be hearing from Josefina Tuki. She is a Shuar Indigenous woman leader from the Ecuadorian Amazon and president of TICA Consortium from Ecuador. Welcome. And then we'll be hearing from great-grandmother Mary Lyons, who's Leech Lake Ojibwe. She's an Ojibwe elder, author, Women of Wellbriety leader. She's from the United Nations Observer on Women and Indigenous Issues from Turtle Island. Thank you so much for being here. So we're going to kick off this panel with a video, and then we're going to be hearing from Julie.
Ponca are originally from the northern plains, forcibly removed into this territory in 1877. And this was our permanent way of being. This momite, this woman's home, this lodge, is a place that has never existed in this form, in the physical form, in this southern Ponca life.
We had always been taught that at one point in time people are going to look back to those of us who have that memory, that blood memory with this particular piece of the earth to teach you, to guide, to give gentle lessons in good ways about how to reconnect with where you are now.
This whole area around here, just within an acre or two, is going to feed so many. It's going to take care of so many ceremonies will help us to become whole again. It is the lodge that the woman cares for and passes on to her eldest daughter, and that's the way it's always been.
So from the very setting of the poles, which were done in a ceremonial way, to us going back and changing the way that it had originally been planned to be built, with WECAN support, we were able to do that. It's been a community effort, a family effort, to really get it going. We wanted to be here for a long time. My mom never saw one here. My grandma never saw one here. And my granddaughter and my grandson will never not know a Ponca Earthen Lodge. It's always going to be part of their history.
There'll be lots of food stored inside the Earthen Lodge, as well as food grown around the Earthen Lodge, and medicines as well. So we're excited for all of the cultural reasons, the spiritual reasons, the healing that this lodge is bringing to the Ponca Nation and the surrounding tribes and everyone who's been involved in this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful building of the lodge. But it's also going to be a place where we can ensure that people have a place to be for safety and shelter and home during the times that are coming. We've been really honored as a Women's Earth and Climate Action Network to do a lot of research on the different traditional seeds that have been grown in this area and kept by the Ponca Nation for generations. So there'll be raised beds that are right next to the Earthen Lodge. Some plants are actually grown on top of the Earthen Lodge. So this will also be a place where the women can grow their food, grow their medicines, and share them with the community.
These small places of healing and medicine change the whole vibration of those who come in contact and get to come inside and see that there is a way forward. We can live in a good space and be responsible citizens of the earth. The dream is the earth telling us again and instructing us again how to live and how to be in a place that is what they call circular economy, or a reciprocal way of being.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure how to use this.
Just put it right up underneath.
Okay, can you all hear me? Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Camp-Horinek, and I'm from the Ponca Nation in Oklahoma. And that beautiful being, that Earthen Lodge that's there, is in my mom's front yard. One of these days I will be her keeper, and was really blessed to be a part of this
project with the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network. Trade off here for a second. It was a beautiful process from start to finish. We had to go back and, no, I don't want to say we had to go back. We were privileged to go back. We were blessed to go back and learn to do things the way that we had done them before. Sorry. There we go. The Earthen Lodge is, and the surrounding territory is a microcosm of just transition as well. She has been a tornado shelter through 2 tornadoes, one of which took out a great deal of large trees on my mom's home place there, and we were safe inside of her. She is a gathering place and a ceremonial space. We now have a garden where we're reintroducing traditional foods and medicinal plants for growth right there in the yard that will be distributed by our Parata, our women's society, to our elders and to the women and the children in our community. Hopefully we reach as far as we can. We have solar panels that will be lighting the Earthen Lodge. We have a composting bathhouse where solar generated heat for the water and composting goes on in the bathhouse. We have an outdoor kitchen that is out there as well now. And all of this is thanks to our partnership with Women's Earth and Climate Action Network. And I just really want to thank you. To be able to watch this video always touches my heart because it's because my granddaughter will never know that we lost this. This was taken from us when we were removed from our homelands in 1877 and brought to Oklahoma. At that point, they didn't think Oklahoma was valuable. No one wanted it. Let's move all the red people to the red land where nothing grows and it's all clay. And then they found oil and that changed the whole thing, just like every other, thing that we've seen change over the course of this time. But my granddaughter and my grandson and all of my nieces and my nephews and all of us that are privileged to be able to go and have and be part of this space, they're not going to remember a time that this didn't exist in their life. And I think that's a beautiful blessing for all of us. I also know that it's the way we ensure that we continue on this path forward, on this just transition path forward. And just transition, I don't know if you all are familiar with that term or not. We hear a lot of terminology when we're in these spaces, right? There are acronyms for everything under the sun. You're trying to figure out what all the things mean. And Oscar was talking about FPIC earlier, and I remember the first time I heard it, I'm like, what's FPIC? Free and prior informed consent. By the way, consultation is not consent, so let's just get that out there, right? Consultation is not consent. But all of these acronyms and everything that are going on out there. So when we're talking about just transition, it's going to look different in every space that we're in. It's going to meet the needs of your community and your lands and what you need to achieve a just transition away from fossil fuel. We talk about that a lot. We need to phase out fossil fuels. What are we phasing in? What is the replacement for fossil fuels in this world that we live in right now? Doing things like growing your own food, using the sun for power, using the wind for energy, using traditional space that doesn't have to be heated and cooled the same way because she stays cool in the summertime and you can build a fire and she's warm in the winter. Foraging from the land, having all of this ability to go back to our natural ways of living is a just transition. It may not be the just transition that will happen in your community. It may be not exactly what you need in your space. So part of the work that we do, part of the work that you need to do is to go back to your space and figure out, how do I begin a just transition here? What are the small steps that I can take in my community, in my home, in my yard? We talk about Earth Day as something that's coming up here. And I think it's really important that, Earth Day is every day, right? We talk about Earth Day is every day and stuff, but what are we doing on those days? What are we doing in honor of our Mother Earth? And are we planting a seed? Are we grow a plant? and help reoxygenate, you know, your own space and stuff. There's so many things that we can do. The video, I think, is an inspiring thing. I hope that anyone can take, you know, pieces of that back to their own spaces and figure out what it is that worked there before. Sorry. My brain is flitting all over the place. I should have actually brought a notebook up here and written some notes down about what I wanted to talk about while I was in this space. And I do want to say thank you also for inviting me to be here and to be part of this space. I'm usually over there on the other side. That's my mom over there with the camera up in the air. Right? So I'm usually the one with the camera up in the air over there, doing the videos, taking the photos, learning. You know, every time I hear her speak, she says something that speaks to my heart. And I remember, you know, that this is an important thing. This is a lesson in the teaching. And I think that that's part of the power that we have as Indigenous peoples and as Indigenous women, is we carry that knowledge and that wisdom in our blood. It's in our very DNA. My grandma called it blood memory. So when we started to build this earthen lodge, even though we had never seen one, we somehow remembered how. And we remembered why it was important. And we remembered how to set the poles and what ceremony we needed to have around those. When we go in there just to visit, I took my granddaughter in there the other day, and she found a sun ray to sit in that was coming in through the top of the earthen lodge. She calls me G. She said, "Look, G, there's my sunshine." And she went and sat in it with her little face up. You know, just those are important things, and that we all should get to be able to do with our grandchildren, and that they get to have these memories and stuff. I have 1 minute left to speak. I'm usually doing that over there on that side as well. So, but just thank you all for coming and sharing a little bit with me about our Ponca project and what we're doing there. And as we continue the journey, please, you know, follow along with WECAN as they, you know, they put it out there, what we're doing. And it's not just work that we do here. First of all, I'd like to say, because this is something that's really important, WECAN does not come in and start a project with you and walk away. They make sure that they stay with you through that process. This is a long-term thing. We're looking at land reclamation. We're looking at more ways that we can, you know, store and save food. We're introducing new seeds, and all of this is with the support of WECAN, and I'm very grateful for that partnership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. That's very kind, and we're so honored to work with you ongoing for these deep projects about how we can live on the earth differently. So thank you for your presentation, and now we'll hear from Aeisatu. Bouba, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I am so delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I think the video is very special, and when I take the perspective of the African continent, and especially the community where I am coming from, the Mbororo pastoralists, you know, we are pastoralists. We live on top of the hills with our cows, and is this our livelihood? We are there not because we want to be there, but because we are with our cattle. We want to search for greener pasture, and also for water for our cattle to feed on. And due to this climate change, it has had a very negative impact, because we have had issues of displacement. You know, everywhere is dried up. There is no water. We have to move for very long distances to search for the grass or for the water, and it is very, very difficult for us. And we have our livelihood also. Our livelihood that is highly affected, because we as women, we depend on our cows. We milk the cows. That's where we have the milk. We drink it, and we also sell it to have some income for our families. And so it's very difficult, because we are losing this our livelihood. and also moving along up and down in search for greener pasture all the time. Women are being faced with so many violence, like especially this gender-based violence. They are being raped all the time because they have to move for very long distances, and along the way they can meet people who can rape them and violate them. So it's very difficult. And our waters also that are being polluted. We have most of the time these extractive industries, because I say we depend on our water. The cow depend on the water, and so when it is polluted, these cows or we ourselves, we cannot have good water to drink, and that is really affecting also our health. And we have our loss of our traditional knowledge. Before, when I was a child, I can remember that we don't go to the hospital. My parents doesn't go to the hospital. Even if someone is sick, they use the traditional knowledge, the leaves, the bark of the trees to treat them. But today, I mean, because of climate change, we cannot find all this traditional knowledge, everything. The trees are being cut off. We cannot see the bark of the trees and so on. And so it is very, very difficult for us as indigenous women, because we are losing our cultures, we are losing our livelihoods.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aeisatu. And one of the things that, one of the reasons we are bringing all of these women together is, it is one of the few times of the year when so many indigenous peoples are in one place in New York. As some of you know who've been involved in the permanent forum for many years, but for those of you who don't know, it's an extraordinary opportunity for us to exchange information. It's happening in many different spaces, including this event, so we can update each other and hear what our sisters are experiencing in Cameroon or wherever we're from, because we're also marking together, what is the climate crisis doing in your community? How are you responding? What is the degree of the harm? What are the solutions? What can we exchange together and support one another? So there's a lot going on in terms of sharing with all of us tonight, but also it's a way that we can update each other and create deeper strategies, because we're all experiencing this collectively, with indigenous peoples on the front lines of a lot of this harm to communities, but also holding so many solutions. So I wanted just to thank you in that context for giving us an update from Cameroon, which we rarely get to hear what is going on in those communities. And with that, I want to hand the floor over to you, Josefina Tuki from Ecuador. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I am from indigenous nationality, Shua woman from the province of Mama Santiago. Our territories, we have global titles recognized for the Ecuadorian state. I would like to begin with this message. Us, the indigenous peoples, are not myths. We are cultures of the forest. From the forest, I am here. From the United States, where we are debating important topics. As a woman, I would like to highlight, as an indigenous woman, our wisdom, indigenous wisdom. We, the women, are the ones in charge of maintaining them. I would like to say, it's not a myth. We're talking about climate change. We've been debating in many international forums in the United Nations, and climate changes in different states and different countries of the world. And we have resolved the rights to biodiversity, and the indigenous people's rights are recognized in the United Nations and sometimes this is not being held. Many of the cultures, indigenous cultures, are extinguishing, which are the protectors of Mother Earth. I will say it this way. We already know where we are driving ourselves as humanity in the universe. Don't you hear people talking about solar eclipses? You see at night the moon is all red. Us indigenous have a different way of interpreting that. That's not something in the scientific community. For us, I'm sorry that I talk this way, but when the moon is red, that means blood, that means death. There will be a great number of deaths. That's how we know, oh, there's going to be a war from one country to another. There's going to be a lot of casualties. An earthquake that is going to disappear, it's going to make cities disappear. People who die in confrontation, that's what that reflects and means to us. There's going to be a lot of death. Just as women, we think, we meditate, we think about God, we connect with God. It's a teaching that's been confused from very ancient cultures. But us, the elders, we conserve that knowledge. We preserve it. The people participating in this UN forum, it becomes a concern for me as a Shua woman that we just come here to speak, to expose and talk about what we want as people. But our governments, Ecuador, for example, and other countries in Latin America, don't listen. There's still mining corporations taking over our territories, destroying our territories. Oil companies continue. Energy corporations continue to contaminate our spaces. Those are sacred spaces for us, not just for the indigenous people. And how many times have we been saying this to the states, to the global humanity, at the humanity at the global level? A good way of life is to preserve the forest, the water to be preserved pure. Rivers are getting dried out in the Amazon, in all of Latin America. We're contaminating the water, the oxygen, the air. Every time we cut down trees, us indigenous continue to offer ways at international. We're not the ones exporting the wood international. Which indigenous peoples are exporting oil? None. Who is extracting minerals, exploiting the earth with minerals? Not the indigenous people. I don't know why the states and the global community does not understand, don't listen to us. There are treaties and accords that have been approved. And they speak about life in general. We need to fulfill those agreements. I don't know what mechanism will make a state or a government to abide by the agreements. And what happens if they don't do it, if they don't abide by it? They don't listen, they don't make the change. So our resources, indigenous people, we know this is oral knowledge, it's not written down. But even if they were written down, they would still not listen. Nobody wants to listen. There are entire peoples and countries in development. Our sense of development is different. did Incas, who everybody knows about, did they extract a whole lot of gold out of the ground? Did they leave it? Did they extract and exploit the ground? Did they contaminate the rivers, the mountains? And now that we're talking about technology and top of the line technology and systems, no, they know, and we know from the history that the Incas were miners and left entire rooms filled with riches. Everybody knows that. And now, where are those minerals? Are they going to play a role in saving our planet? As a Shua woman from Ecuador, my proposition is that we are all experiencing this. All indigenous peoples worldwide are experiencing this type of situation, not just one country, not just one nation. We're not part of an industrial state, no. We all have to reflect whether we want life and diversity and biodiversity. And we need to debate seriously in a space how to stop this contamination, this destruction in the world. We are, us human beings, are the ones destroying, not other living beings. Fishes in the ocean are not destroying their environment. Trees are not contaminating. They're rather dying. We are the ones doing it. We are the ones that need to stop that contamination, and we need to start thinking differently. You keep thinking about development. Perhaps the type of development those countries are thinking who hate our knowledge, our indigenous knowledge. Why don't they seek for a different planet, travel, and leave us alone? Those who say indigenous peoples are not good for development, our role is to improve Mother Earth. That is my message. Let's reflect, moving forward. We need to reflect on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josefina, for your really important comments. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say something before I hand the floor over to great-grandmother Mary Lyons. You know, it's really important to speak this out loud, that, you know, many of us in this room, many of my colleagues are here, we have been fighting for years to end fossil fuel extraction all over the world because of the climate crisis and move to renewable energy. It absolutely has to happen. We have to go up against the fossil fuel industry, the fossil fuel economy, the way that that relationship has built very, very violent power in the world. All of that is true. But, and this is a really important but, if we just click over and say, okay, now we're going to move to renewable energy, which we want solar, wind, we want these things for sure. If we do not interrogate how we do that, we are now jeopardizing indigenous lands, indigenous territories, rivers, waters, oceans, everywhere with mining for minerals. And it's really important to understand that we don't want to just substitute one extractive economy and one extractive practice for another. That is not the answer. There's no question we need special minerals for mining for renewable energy. Yes, and we need to get off fossil fuels. But this discussion about how this is going to happen and making sure that indigenous rights, human rights, and ecological integrity is part of that transition is vital to indigenous peoples and everyone all around the world. So I really wanted to thank you, Josefina, for bringing up this point about mining, because it's, you know, becoming equally serious, and for some communities even more serious than fossil fuels. So let's be really mindful when we're talking about the just transition, that it is just. Okay, thank you. And now let's hear from Grandmother Mary Lyons. Thank you, Mary.
Immigration. First of all, it's an honor to be with these women and to listen to what happens in their homelands and out there, and it's an honor to be with all of you. And again, you know, thank you for inviting me. My sister Casey is always one of my educators, my supporters, you know. She said, "This is where we're going, sister." I guess this is where we're going. And that's how much trust I have for her. You know, all I could say is ditto, ditto, ditto. But what I'd like to do is bring it back down to reality and the simplicity of where we are and how far we have gone from this simple way of life that we used to call organic lifestyle. You see, I sat in the arena where when I was younger, I didn't know what electricity was. I didn't know what water faucet was. I never knew what a floor was other than a dirt floor, air conditioning and this stuff. I mean, you know, our outside bathrooms was compost. I said, you know, this is just the way we lived. We never lived in one area very long because, you know, we didn't want to homestead, you know, who we were within on Mother Earth because it just wasn't the way it was. So we needed to make sure that growth development continued. And what I mean about that is you heard already talked about blood memory. You know, everything in the Shinabi of who I am, a Madewa, and a spiritual leader in out there, we believe everything has a spirit. And, you know, I don't think there's not one person here that does not believe that. You know, there is memory that is based in everything that is within this planet. And I just want to take you through a little exercise. Okay, first of all, I want you all to close your eyes. And when you close your eyes, I want you to think about having a conversation with the Creator. And you're having this original agreement before you enter this planet that you're going to come as a student, you're going to walk as a student, and you're going to leave as a student. And so when you enter this planet, you're entering, your spirit is swimming in the oceans, in the water of your mother's womb. And within that water, you're being downloaded with all this wonderful memory of times past, what this world consists of. And then when it's time for you to enter this world, first of all, I want you to all take a deep breath now. That's your entrance into this world. It's air. And after that air, you feel that warmth of the sun, the fire. And after that fire, you nourish and you plant your feet on Mother Earth. Okay, now I want you to slowly open your eyes now. I want you to look around this room. I want you to look at your neighbor. I want you to look at this plant life. You see everything, even out in that window, you're looking at that water. Everything that's out there, we're all connected. You see, those are the 4 elements, and that's all we're made up of. We all have one address, and it's called Mother Earth. We cannot be so separate and be so demanding within our one garden, because what happens in one garden will happen in another garden and another garden throughout the planet. You see, when you interrupt the life cycle, that's what we call extraction. We talked about it earlier. I was in another session. And it's like, you can see the confusion on some people's faces, and you know a lot of them are fairly new. They're coming here. You can always tell who are the ones that have been here year after year and have been doing the work and other, because it's just a common conversation. So that it raises a question, because you see, what are we individuals doing to help prevent what has already here? Because it only took 150 years to be where we're at. And we got to think about 150 years ago, we were pretty organic. You know, our forests were our huge stores. You know, we had the fish in the water. We never had to pay a water bill. We never had to pay an electricity bill. We never had to pay a property bill. You see, what happened is we just started to just dismantle and to break the promise we did prior to coming into this planet. And so we have to be responsible. You know, we can point fingers, we can be so angry, but it's not going to help us. One of the things we have to do is build that bridge. And it's really difficult at times now in building the bridge for people that don't even understand who we are as indigenous peoples, the original gardeners, of how much work we do to keep the organicness real so we can grow the foods, so we can put it on the world's tables. And I don't think a lot of people get that. They don't get those connections until they realize that we're in this together. And one thing I want to leave you with that is, and I had said this earlier, I'm very grateful. I only have one great-granddaughter. I had 9 children, 7 boys. I thought I was going to have a house full. I don't. Because I think some of the work that I do, and a lot of my relatives do, they just didn't want to invest on new gardeners because they seen what was happening. But what makes me so sad is I know, well, I mean, first of all, it made me happy my great-granddaughter knows how to garden. She knows how to live as if everything was taken away. But the majority of her friends don't. They don't have a clue. So that saddens us because they're our relatives. No matter how angry we get with them, we can't run away from them. We're all residents of this earth. And we have to bring this silliness from across the street because they were never learned to be gardeners. They would not know how to survive because they had the privilege of just being. So we have to just stop and start thinking about how do we take this anger energy and to feel sorry for them because they're pitiful, because they don't know any better. We have to remind them we're in this together because what you do to us, you're doing to your own children. So we have to help paint that story that Creator gave us. Show them their responsibilities. We're in this together. You know, you take out one part of the address, you're taking out one part of your own life. So I want to say, we could go on and on and on about this. But the reason why I wanted to bring this to a calm is because I walk through these hallways seeing so many angry people. And they're not angry to be angry. They're angry because they love something and it's being destroyed. And they just don't know how to have a voice, a reason for somebody else to understand what's happening. So I want to say Chimigwich and thank you for being here, and we have other speakers that you're going to join there.
Thank you for that. That was really needed words, great-grandmother. Really important for us because
I came from Minnesota and ice.
what?
I'm from Minnesota and I just got over this ice thing. If it's not ice, it's something else. Line 3, I'm always anyways, I'm always in action.
Thank you for your action. So I like to say we can be very fierce because we need to be fierce, but we can also be tender. We can be both. Thank you. So let's give them all big applause. Thank you so much for being on the panel.
I needed you. I thought of all the stuff I meant to say.
Thank you.
Look at me, my girl.
Thank you so much. If Patricia Gualinga comes, please let me know and we'll stop because she might come at this point. So we're going to start our second panel in a moment, but we have a special announcement that we want to make in between the panels. Some of you might know, and if not, then this is your chance to learn that starting next week, or I guess at the end of this week actually, there's a very big conference going on in Colombia on transition off of fossil fuels. And this is a government meeting that is being hosted by the government of Colombia and the Netherlands. And if you follow the UN climate talk process, you will know that at the end of COP30 at the end of last year, there were a lot of countries that really wanted to have the fossil fuel phase-out discussion happen at COP30, and it did not, even though that discussion had been carried over from COP28. I won't go into a lot of technical details. It should have happened, and it didn't. Some other good things happened at COP30, like the Just Transition Mechanism was signed off by governments. The Gender Action Plan also got approved by parties. So there are some good things that happened, but the main thing that we need to have happen, which is ending fossil fuels, did not get discussed. And so it's very exciting that the governments of Colombia and Netherlands are hosting this event at the last part of this month, so that we can, in fact, start moving with governments who want to have this phase out take place outside of the UNFCCC space, which is very compromised. And hopefully then it can come back into and be something that is brought into the UN space later. But a core part of civil society that has pushed for this, first of all, Indigenous people have been talking about ending fossil fuel extraction forever. And there's been a really powerful initiative called the Fossil Fuel Treaty, which is a civil society initiative that really has also deeply helped this process of governments getting together to take this action and start this conference. And so I really wanted to acknowledge this Fossil Fuel Treaty. WECAN is very honored to be on the steering committee of the treaty. And within that process, there's a lot of focus also ensuring that there's a much more just and healthy and equitable way to have this action that we know the world needs to take, getting off of fossil fuels, moving to renewable energy, implementing a just transition, and how to do that. And we're really honored today because there's an announcement about the treaty and Indigenous peoples. And I'd like to invite Casey Camp-Horinek from the Ponca Nation and her daughter, who you just heard from, Julie, to come up and make that announcement. And I wanted that context so you understood what this is all about.
Surprise! I just love surprises. I love to get to be surprised as well. I need to tell you, first of all, that the Ponca Nation of Oklahoma is part of a forced removal people. We've been decimated by various ways that the federal government of the United States has attempted genocide, directly, indirectly, in many different ways, starting with the smallpox blankets and any number of legislative acts. And most recently in the last 40 or, no, more than that, 60 years, 75 years, through the act of genocide by poisoning us to death by the extractive industry, ConocoPhillips 66, and all of these people are mass murderers, and I really want you all to acknowledge that within your own territories, within your own lives. That when someone deliberately poisons the air, the water, and the earth, they are poisoning all living things, from the softest little onion in the ground to those that swim in the waters, to the waters herself, to the breath of the winds that's shared by every one of us. We are in contact here. I think COVID showed us how quickly things can move from one human to another. Because of that, because the air, water, and earth is so poisoned by that particular extractive industry in our area. Virtually every Ponca family has multiple cases of cancers within each family. None are exempt. And cardiovascular diseases, children having to carry their inhalers to school and share them with their brothers and sisters. Inadequate health care through the Indian Health Service. We're not even Indian, by the way. And so when we heard about this thing, this fossil fuel phase out, we've been hearing about it for years. And at each meeting that we've gone to, we've upheld the work that's being done because it's important that we partner with each other. That when we see something good being done, we don't say, well, who's doing it? I'm all jealous now. You know, we should be doing that. No, you have to uphold the work that they're doing. Try to find a way that they begin to understand that people like you just heard talking up here have the answers. And not only that, we are nations within a nation. So we're not just stakeholders. We are rights holders by virtue of 5 treaties with the Ponca and every other nation on Turtle Island. And around the world, indigenous nations belong at the table making the decisions and bringing what we have to bring about life continuing on Earth. In that way, working with WECAN, who is on the steering committee and believes the way that we do, we were very blessed to take this idea to our chairperson, Chairman Trey Howe, and tell him these are the things going on. This is why it would affect the Ponca people in a certain way, and it would also protect our neighbors, the farmers, the ranchers, the poor people, white, black, and brown, that live in our area, not just the red people. And so today we want to announce that the Ponca Nation joins the Fossil Fuel Treaty Network of 37 indigenous nations and communities and 18 countries working towards the implementing of the bold international proposal calling for an equitable and just phase out of the fossil fuels. Kind of like Vanna White, eh? Just presenting this so beautifully. This marks the first time, and thank you, Catherine, for these fine words. I'm just reading them. This marks the first time a tribe in the United States has endorsed the Fossil Fuel Treaty, setting a powerful precedent ahead of the historic first conference on transitioning away from fossil fuels that will be hosted by the governments of Colombia and the Netherlands next week. For decades, the Ponca tribe's been a leader in progressive legislation to stop fossil fuel extraction. We have passed a moratorium on fracking in 2017. We've passed the first statute recognizing, not giving, and this is important, but recognizing the immutable Ponca rights of nature. We know that natural law exists. It's simply up to us, you, me, and everybody you know, to begin to recognize within your own lives that natural law exists and that human beings are simply another species within nature. So there it is, I'll let it go. All right. Oh, I love photo ops too. Oh, is it up enough? There we go.
There you go.
I'm going to be a talking head up here. Let me move down by you, Julie, instead. Here, move up taller. I can stand behind you. All right. Woo!
announcement of.
Okay, thank you. There's more coming, but thank you so much. Thank you so much, and we're so excited and honored to be supporting the Ponca Nation and all of us getting ready to go to Colombia. And we are also going to bring up the next speakers now. I don't think, there's Patty. Okay, perfect timing. I know that Patricia Galinga only has a small amount of time, so is this a good time for you? Okay. So I'll give you a little introduction. Patricia Galinga is Kishwa. She is an indigenous leader from the Sariaco community, and she has been appointed to as a member of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues as one of the regional leaders for 3 years, a 3-year term. And she's also a spokeswoman for Amazon Women in Defense of the Jungle. And we're very honored that she also is a WECAN project coordinator for one of our reforestation and forest protection projects in the Amazon. And of course, as you probably understand, she's from Ecuador, since I said that she was from Sariaco in Ecuador. But we're so glad to have you here. And Patty's been engaged in all the high-level sessions, so we're really honored she can come over here and make some comments for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Offspring. My participation is going to be in Spanish. I just came back from the forum meeting because I know there are many women here from the front lines, very powerful women, and WECAN has been a huge ally of these women, so I told myself I at least have to stop by for a few seconds to that meeting. And I'm one of the new members of the Permanent Forum of the United Nations. I started yesterday in this new adventure in the protection of this space of the United Nations. In this space that the indigenous people have won and hasn't been given for free. So we have been discussing the topic of this year, which was health, and we have also been discussing climate change, its consequences, the court decisions in the international courts. And I was able to talk to some members, but many members want to speak as well, and we didn't have enough time because many people want to denounce what's happening in the territories, and we live in many things. The extractivist interest hasn't changed. The paternalism towards the indigenous people and the way we're seeing the racism and the inequality towards women, it hasn't changed. So we are still advancing in those fighting territories with the indigenous people. And I think that women, and sometimes silently, have been in the front lines, have been fighting the expansion that exists in indigenous territories, many times being criminalized, as many women have been in Latin America, persecuted, stigmatized. Many women have suffered more than any other defender because we face also the gender inequality. So when a woman raises their voices, they don't want to listen to them, and they want to stop them however they can. And those are spaces in which we have been able to fight to make our rights to be respected. Because of women, because of our sensibility, we can feel better how this climate change has been affecting us, what's happening to our territories and the health of our families. Women are more sensible and therefore the most affected. And it doesn't mean that we're just complaining. We're also giving solutions with a feminist focus, with our voices. In Sariaco, we have a reforestation project that WECAN has supported, but the women are the ones who have collected the seeds because of climate change, our women are the ones who sing with their children while doing the work, and it's a very different focus, something that is missing from humanity, that still has a very classist and chauvinistic vision, and that we think governments are provoking wars and they're not listening to us. I'm here with you. I feel what you're feeling. I know what's happening in the territory. And for me, it's an honor to be here. And it's an honor that I was elected as member of the Permanent Forum. Thank you so much for having me.
Gracias, Patty. Thank you so much. And thank you for representing and doing such a great job, Patty, of being there and standing for all the good things. We really appreciate having Patty inside the UN fighting for all of us. Let's give her a hand. Thank you, Patricia Bonilla. I think she's running back to go back inside the UN. Thank you, Patty. And so now I'm going to invite the next speakers up. I don't know if Ambassador Leonora is here. No, she didn't make it. Okay, that's fine. Janine. Janine, are you here? Yes, please come on up. Janine Yatsi. And I'll introduce everybody once they get seated. Andrea. And Jacqueline. And Casey. Thank you. So we're really excited for this next panel. We're going to be hearing from Janine Yatsi, who's Dene, and she is the Director of Global Programs at the Woven Project. So we're really honored to have you here. And some of you might know Errol Derringer because she has spoken a lot of our events. And so I'm delighted that you are woven in with Errol as well. That's really special. Awesome. And then we'll be hearing from Andrea Pucci Mancillo. She's Quechua. She is Quechua Native Peoples of Sariaku Secretary, and Jalinga, I believe it's pronounced Jalinga, Foundation Organizational Support, and she's also a WECAN project lead for the Reforestation and Forest Protection Project in Ecuador. And then we'll be hearing from Jacqueline Udizio, who is Cacataibo Women's Federation from the Peruvian Amazon from Peru. And then last but not least, we'll also be having some rounding up words from Casey Camp-Horinek from the Ponca Nation, who you just heard from. She is the Ponca Nation Environmental Ambassador, and we're very honored to have her on our board at WECAN, and is also project coordinator with WECAN from Turtle Island. So thank you all so much. And with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to Janine, and we're going to do this awkward thing of bringing this fully functioning mic over to you. There you go. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I'll just start talking. Hi everyone. Shea Janine Yazi and Shea Janine Shmurdo Protochi English Chin, Nifana that Shipshay goes in bed at Shinan. Akut the nest son and Nishwan. I am from Dene Territories in the Southwest United States, and you know I see a couple of my relatives in the audience, so it's important to introduce myself in my language, which everyone has already spoken so eloquently about the role of our customs, our language, and our worldviews, and how much it guides and is the heart of our spirit of resistance in the work that we do. I think what has come top of mind as I was listening to the speakers, and as I think about what we are faced with, as many of us are headed down to Santa Marta later this week and are going to be engaged again in another international conversation about something that we should have been doing a long time ago. I think about the work that I've had to do in my own communities, where a lot of times we can get really disconnected in a lot of our international advocacy from the realities of our people who are on the ground and doing a lot of this work. And we can take a lot of the language that we use for granted. Just transition is one of those. It was mentioned also by a couple of speakers about like, what is this thing? We're always coming up with new terms. And I feel like one of the things that has really grounded me in this field of advocacy that is just transition and the way that we are speaking about moving away from fossil fuel development while also being careful about other forms of extractivism, is that in talking with my relatives about what this means, we really interrogated, like, what does justice mean? What is a just framework? What does a transition mean? And like they immediately agreed, like, transition is not what we're trying to do. We're not putting, they're like, that sounds like you're just like moving one foot sideways and you're still going the same way. That's not what we want to do. And over the course of many, many hours, as some of you know in community work, like it takes a while for us to really talk things through, where I've had these advocates, these elders who shared their stories of just the decades of resistance that our people were engaged in, and connecting how all of these extractive industries and the ways that they've been brought into our communities cannot be disconnected from boarding school violence, from the genocide of our peoples, from the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous peoples, from all of these other things that we fight. And so to them, they said, you know what, we don't want transition, we want transformation. And justice means returning wholeness to ourselves. It means not looking at the challenge we have before us as not mining any more coal, but maybe, you know, we'll go mine some lithium for some solar panels and the batteries that they need. But looking at what are we called to do in this moment as humans to restore justice for all of us, to restore wholeness to ourselves. And this also informed the way that we even look at things like conservation and what it looks like to deal with the challenge of climate change. Like, we're not living in a time where we need to be more sustainable. Like, we're living in a time where we need to give back much more than we have taken for generations. That is our responsibility in this moment. And so it gets frustrating for me because we all have to fight to be in these negotiation spaces, to be taken seriously. I mean, look what's happening right now at the Permanent Forum. It's shrinking. They're taking away our seats. They're not showing us the respect of all the people who've had to, like, fundraise and struggle to even get here. And they just have to stand in a room for hours when they're bringing their hearts and their souls and their spirits and their wisdom to these things that we need to build together in order to protect all of life. We're having our spaces taken away from us, and we're having more barriers put before us as we try to come into these conversations. But I think that when we center what it is that we're fighting for and why it's so valuable, why it's so important for these solutions, it also goes to show, like, why we've never given up. And why it doesn't matter how hard these battles are, we still will never give up. We know what we are fighting for. We know the value of what vision we hold for our communities and for all humanity and for all of life. And I think that when we have situations like this and spaces like this where we're able to connect with other people who are interested and who want to hear more from us, that the number one thing you can do is help us continue to kick down these doors, to make sure that decisions aren't made without us, to make sure that Indigenous people's rights aren't treated like some cute little thing that we can reference but not uphold, to make sure that our traditional knowledge holders are actually given the respect they need to be at these decision-making tables, to inform strategy, to inform solutions. Because we're not fighting for our own profit model, we're not fighting for our own projects that's, you know, going to benefit if we transition away from fossil fuels. We are fighting for the very foundation of sacred life. And we are fighting for our current generations, and we're fighting for our future generations. And it is phenomenally beautiful that we are fighting to create something that benefits everyone and not for revenge, right? It is phenomenally beautiful. Our generations of existence is not an accident. We didn't get lucky. It's instructive. We know what it takes to fight against empire in all its forms. We know how tricky they are, and they try to co-opt our shift to preserve themselves. And that's why we have to be at the table and heard in everything that we bring. And I'll end there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nina. It's so important what you're saying, which is why we're having these forums, because people are not being given enough space, as you said, and those spaces are shrinking. And for that matter, the UN is under a crisis to continue multilateralism because of all the funding cuts that have been going on. And it's really, really serious. So we have to create more of our own spaces because we have to rely on each other and really stand with these women. So thank you so much. I want to now invite Andrea to speak, but before you do, we're going to show a short video about a project that she's been very engaged in with us. If we could go ahead and show that. You needed a minute, okay. Okay, the minute is happening. We're doing a little technology to get the video to show, and then we'll hear from Andrea.
Can I just give a little shout out then?
Yes.
Because I forgot something.
Please.
In the spirit of creating these spaces and how powerful they can be for us, I just wanted to give a shout out to my sister, Talia, who organized just a few weeks ago a gathering of Indigenous peoples impacted by uranium industry, nuclear industry, uranium mining, milling, processing, and brought together Indigenous peoples to share their own stories and strategies and about the ongoing fights we have. Because in this just transition, one of the things we keep forgetting is that they keep trying to highlight nuclear energy as a transitional energy. And we will not allow that poison to continue to be spread upon our lands.
Great shout out, thank you. Okay, let's go ahead. Thank you. The Ecuadorian Amazon rainforest, Indigenous women of the Aeisatu community are taking action to protect their territories and communities, one seed at a time.
Yo pienso que es algo que es único, un trabajo con mujeres, reforestando, regenerando, organizándose, generando también recursos a través de eso, proponiendo nuevas alternativas, recuperando todo lo que está perdiéndose.
WECAN has been honored to be working in partnership with Indigenous women leaders in the Aeisatu community for many years, which has led to this thriving forest protection and reforestation project. This project is helping to protect and restore over 135,000 hectares of rainforest in the Amazon. We know that healthy global forests are absolutely vital to mitigating the worst impacts of both the climate and biodiversity crises, and the Amazon rainforest is critical in this global effort, as are the Indigenous women of the Amazon. The Amazon rainforest is the most biodiverse ecosystem and largest forest on Earth. Yet, the Amazon is at a critical tipping point and faces severe threats of mining, extraction, and industrial expansion, driving rapid deforestation, biodiversity extinction, and the climate crisis. Indigenous women are successfully reforesting and protecting forests, guided by the Aeisatu initiative of Kausak Sacha, the Living Forest Declaration.
Kausak Sacha es la búsqueda de un reconocimiento de que la naturaleza, la selva, es un ser vivo consciente y por lo tanto sujeto de derechos. Las mujeres están muy emocionadas porque son las que realmente cultivan la tierra. También les permite estar muy activas y ser reconocidas como guardianas de esta reforestación, de estas selvas, y es un trabajo en las que estamos muy emocionadas.
La mujer indígena se conecta con la naturaleza a base de prácticas tradicionales que nosotros tenemos. La mujer indígena desde hace mucho tiempo ha venido correlacionándose con la tierra, con el aire, con la selva mismo. Es una conexión muy profunda que nosotros tenemos, ya que todo lo que nos rodea es energético y nos conserva. Nosotros dependemos de ella y ella depende de nosotros.
We host trainings on women's leadership, reforestation, advocacy, and land defense to support a healthy forest. Women participants traveled deep into the jungle to gather over 100 species of native trees that are in danger of going extinct. These trees are central to Amazonian ecological integrity, waterways, and culture of the Sariaco community.
Y manteniendo nuestras prácticas tradicionales de seguir reforestando árboles y plantas que están ya en peligro de extinción en nuestros pueblos, para de esta manera conservar el territorio libre y sano de otras actividades extractivas.
Las mujeres de Sarayaku se encuentran muy contentas porque se sienten que están aportando directamente a la conservación. Como mujeres y madres también están compartiendo el conocimiento con sus hijos.
This project also includes advocacy at international forums, where the forest solutions and expertise of Sariaco women leaders are amplified on the global stage. As governments and corporations continue to advocate for fall solutions that commodify nature, such as carbon credits, carbon offsets, and biodiversity credits, this project is offering a successful, scalable strategy outside of these market-based mechanisms. This work is generated at the grassroots level and protects and restores forests damaged by colonization and extractive industries, and tackles the core drivers of the climate and biodiversity crises.
La reforestación con WECAN y con el enfoque femenino nos permite hacer que esa fortaleza que tienen las mujeres se plasme en una reforestación diferente, que esté absolutamente acorde a los principios de los pueblos indígenas y a la visión de la selva indígena.
Now we're going to hear from Andrea, who is deeply engaged in this project.
Gracias, Osprey.
Thank you, Osprey. Good afternoon. My name is Andrea Mancilla, and I want to let you know that my father is indigenous and my mother is African descendant from Ecuador. And I consider myself as a complement because the two groups of people are resisting and fighting constantly. The two people are suffering from discrimination, not only in our country, but around the world. And I don't speak as nicely as Patricia maybe, but this is the first time that I'm in a panel here. And usually I'm behind my leaders, the authorities of Sarajevo. I do the technical part, but in this occasion, OSFRE through WECAN has given me the opportunity to be here in the front in this panel to talk about what we just watched. And it gives me a lot of sorrow and it pains my heart because yesterday the minister of the indigenous people of Ecuador was there, and in the session she said that nothing was happening in Ecuador, that everything is under control, when that's not the reality. And I was so upset and I got angry and I wanted to grab her phone and say at the microphone and say that's not true, she's lying. The indigenous people are resisting, the rivers are contaminated, they're killing us, and nobody's doing anything for us. We are self-sufficient and we are protecting the nature. We want to protect nature for the whole world, not just for us. And unfortunately, sometimes people just don't want to listen. But these are the only spaces where we can be heard. Every year, every 2 years, every once in a while. And in the territories, women like the ones we just saw do the hardest work. They walk for hours to recollect the seeds. They walk with their children on their back, on their hands to collect those seeds and put them on the ground. Nobody recognizes that work. Nobody knows about that work. Maybe here, because you can see us here with our colorful costumes and dresses, but you have to value the work that we do from the territory. This happens once a year, but we will be back to our territories to keep working, to keep putting effort into the reforestation project supported by WECAN. That's what we have been doing for a year and a half. And it's so comforting to see that women are being empowered, because that's what the project is all about, to empowering women. To not see women as people that stay at home. In fact, I can give you the Sarayaku example. It wasn't just resistance of the men, it was women as well. And that always happens in all the towns and villages, and we're not the ones who get visibility, but that's why we're here. And a big example is that among the permanent forum, we have 11 women out of 16 members from the permanent forum. So that means that we are moving forward, and that our work is not in vain, that our fight is not in vain, that our resistance is not in vain, that little by little, step by step, we are achieving our goals. Thank you.
Thank you for your powerful words, and we feel the energy of the emotions that you have. We feel the energy of the emotions that you have when you know something's not right. So thank you for standing up and for expressing that. I really appreciate it. You need to be listened to. You should be listened to. And I just want to give an extra applause since this is her first time speaking on panel. It's amazing. That was excellent. Thank you. Now we'll hear from Jackie.
Good afternoon, everybody. For me, it's a pleasure to be here in this panel with all my colleagues, and I want to thank WECAN for the invitation. In this panel, we talk about the fair transition, and from my territory, I don't think that we can talk about a fair transition while the government doesn't stop with the violence against indigenous people, while the government keeps creating policies in favor of these extractionist organizations that damage our territories. In our territory, we are being criminalized. We have 5 leaders that have been killed. In the Amazon, 36 leaders have been killed, and the government is not doing anything. Unfortunately, we are being criminalized for defending our territory. We are always speaking from the territory because that's where we reside. Because if we disappear, the Amazon will disappear. We are the ones who take care of the Amazon. And that's not just for the indigenous people, it's for you, for us, for all of us, for the planet. As someone mentioned, for us it's not easy to come to these spaces and to express ourselves freely. It's very difficult. We recognize the work of our leaders that have been working for years on this, but we recognize that coming to the permanent forum, by coming here, we won't be bringing solutions, but there's an evidence that we have participated in these spaces to fight for the rights of our indigenous people and other sisters that have been demanding rights just like we're doing now. And as my sister Andrea said, for us to come to these spaces, it's difficult. They're very limited. I have always participated in other events. I see people from Amazon Watch and from Letmia and from other delegations, but I'm very happy to keep bringing the specific voices of my country from Ecuador, from our federation, from our women and children. Narco traffic is invading our territories. Children have been raped, getting pregnant, and suffering violence. They're human trafficking. They're being exploited because of the mining that we were describing before. Drug trafficking is invading territories, and we want the state to find the way and stop the way in how they come to our territories. They don't have a dialogue with us, and they don't take into consideration the international tools that we have, and they keep creating policies in favor of these extractivist organizations, not taking into consideration the people who are living there. Today we were saying, why is that the government is not taking into consideration what we're saying? That meeting was today, and you know why? The government is not paying attention to what we say because they're part of that. They are criminals. They're selling our territories. They're negotiating behind our backs. We're not participating of the income of these organizations that are invading our territories, and they keep creating policies in favor of these organizations. In my territory in Peru, they have created a lot of laws in favor of these extractivist organizations, and we feel completely abandoned. And we have placed complaints locally, internationally, and we are here, and that's what we mentioned in the meeting today. We understand that there's a lot to do. We need to keep demanding while we're alive, and unfortunately the protection mechanisms in our territories are not working. But as a Catataibo people, we need to self-protect ourselves, creating indigenous guards in our territory so we can find a way to protect each other, because our lives in Peru or in other countries are worthless. And I just want to tell you that. Thank you so much for being in this space. Thank you, WECAN. And we need to keep demanding our rights in our territories, because if we don't do that, we're going to disappear. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your really important report to us of what's happening in Peru and into your community. Thank you for letting us know. And you know, one thing I wanted to say before I hand the floor over to Casey is that this is such an incredibly intense time where, you know, the wealthy elite are consolidating their power more and more. And we can see this playing out all over the world. And so it's really going to take all of us collaborating more, being in solidarity more, because we're up against such big forces that we have to work together, and we need to stand with Indigenous peoples who are protecting the biodiversity and all the things people here have shared. This is not a time actually to stand down. It's a time to stand up and commit more, be more vocal, be more in your fight, be more in your struggle. Find out the Indigenous peoples in the lands where you live and support their actions, their calls to action, their campaigns. This is definitely not a time to back down. Don't be afraid. Stand with us. I mean, we all have our fear, for sure, but we can overcome our fear by standing together. But this is not a time to just feel like I'm so overwhelmed, I can't manage this. This is the time we're born into right now. And this is the struggle that we're seeing. And it is intensifying across Indian country, for Black and brown communities all over the world, low-income communities. We are really in the fight for our lives, and that is not an exaggeration. And so when I hear these stories, I immediately think, how can I help? How can I contribute? What am I doing? Am I giving everything I can? Because this is the moment we're in. And you don't need to figure it out. We have the leadership here. We have the leadership here. So with that, I'm very honored to hand the mic over to Casey Camp-Horinek from the Ponca Nation.
Judy is my true name. Casey Camp-Horinek is my colonized name. I wear them both proudly. I'm a member of the Ponca peoples in the occupied territory of Oklahoma. And I'm really, really grateful to be on this panel and to have listened to your wisdom as well as the wisdom of those that were on the other panel prior to me. You know, my little baby sister, Mary, over there, it's a different culture when you fight over who's the oldest. She keeps trying to hedge on me. Okay, what month, what year? But I listened to her, I listened to my daughter, I listened to the others, Patty, who's representing us. And I'm totally, absolutely inspired and gratified and comforted by the knowledge that's shared. Osprey, thank you for gathering us together. I didn't know where Catherine, and there she is peeking out. Those were her words I was saying up there. Paraphrasing Ashley. So many of the volunteers. You guys are pretty awesome. Really respect you a great deal because this is an ongoing effort. I think the first time I participated in something was 2010, 11, 12.
I think like 2010.
Yeah. Osprey was among the organizing group. I think there were two of you that organized 100 women coming together from around the world. And it was an eye-opener, a spirit-sharing moment to be in such a group of humanity. Our understanding, first of all, is that we're living in a time of prophecy. Perhaps that's around the world. I'm not certain, but I know for those of us that are from the plains, from the time that I was very young, I was told of this time that was coming. This time of purification, that's what they called it at that time, the spiritual leaders taking us into ceremony and telling us what the spirits were saying. In our language, they're called Aeisatu. That simply means translator, because they have that incredible gift of translating from one world into the next what was coming. They also informed us that prophecies can be changed by action. We are not helpless to them. But they talked about a purification time when our Mother the Earth would purify herself. She would decide, already that decision was made, that things were going to have to change, that they could not stay as they were because of all the species that Wakanda had given a place on this sacred earth. Only human being, only man had sinned. The deer still know where to look for water and how to drink, where to find the food, where not to overgraze. The waters knew where to flow and when to flow. The Mother Ocean had her ways that she did things. The powerful volcanoes with their fire, the same way the Father, Son, the rhythms of the Moon Mother that runs within all life, including that of woman who has that incredible relationship with that, and man who has that incredible relationship with fire. All these things came to pass as I grew older. We were involved in civil rights. We were called activists. For us, that just meant being born Ponca, with being a responsible Ponca, for keeping alive the ways for our generations to come, just like the generations before had kept the ways alive and fought for life itself and for all of our relations, recognizing that there was an inherent right for us to remain Ponca. There was an inherent right for the rabbit to jump. There is an inherent right for the winds to blow and the thunders to come. And within those inherent rights, the natural law was obvious. And when that natural law began to bend towards what humankind thought was destructive, larger tornadoes, things that were moving from the deep south up into our territory that had never lived there before, butterflies adjusting themselves to a different way, the heat becoming more ferocious in some spaces, and the drought happening and the floods happening, wildfires, hurricanes. I understood that those prophecies were about climate change. Science agreed, because they're finally catching up. And humankind has to stand in front of that mirror of natural law and look into it and see their duties, their responsibility, the love of creation that has allowed our species to eat, drink, and breathe. And the love of creation that should exist for 7 generations to come at least. The right to eat, drink, and breathe. Within this context emerged this thing they now call indigenous wisdom, indigenous knowledge. As young people, I can speak for my sister Mary, we were simply being ourselves. We were simply learning as we were supposed to learn, by oral tradition, by seeing when the corn changed its planting time. It used to be after the first thunder, certain things happened. That's changed. First thunder might be all year round now. But that's okay, because we understand what change is. Nothing is static. And that's where we have to be right now at this time as warriors for peace, for the way that just transition will be shaped. It will be shaped individually. And I'll tell you why it was important to me to come as a woman into these understandings. It's because that's the way I was raised. We were raised for the strongest movements that happened with the American Indian movement, with the Trail of Broken Treaties, with Wounded Knee in 1973, with the Standing Rock occupation, with coming to the United Nations, whatever it is. All of it started around our mama's table. Now it's around my table, where I sit with my children and they teach me. I watch my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren and their needs, and it teaches me. I listen to how the water moves, or if it's even there, and it teaches me. I was in the desert, in the homelands of your people, a few days back, visiting grandchildren out there too, Chaco Canyon. And I learned so much, listening to Kendra. She was talking about, the onslaught of the ones that are so greedy. There's names for them. It's just pitiful, as my sister Mary said. In the Ponca teachings, hardly anybody does anything wrong in the terms of the longer understandings, because we're taught as well, if somebody does something and you go talk to your friend, your sister, your mama about it, the answer is always the same. Pity them and pray for them. Always pity them and pray for them. And that does not mean you don't warrior up and take to the streets, because your voices are important. It's necessary for us to always be what they call civil society. My youngest son told me recently that if 3.5% of any population stands up together they can overthrow that government that's there right now. I know that 100% of my family's involved in this way of being and thinking and loving our Mother the Earth so much that we are going to insist that there be no uranium. We already had that BS pulled on us in the 1980s with the Department of Energy targeting indigenous lands for development. As if their money is real. As if their words are real. As if they have a heart. So now what we have to do is decide. If they can say, here's a piece of paper and there's a law that now you must follow, I can do that too. And I can find the way that it works and we can all do it together. And so can you. I'm just one individual. I was talking to a young indigenous person who was saying we need a youth caucus here at the UN. And we do, an indigenous youth caucus. We also need an indigenous elder caucus. While you still have us, then there needs to be a space made for you, because I was so blessed to be able to sit with my mamas and aunties and grandmas and grandpas and listen. That's all we were allowed to do, was listen. And I was told, you don't have to do what I say, but you do have to listen. And it changed me as a human being, because now I know more about what they wanted me to learn. And it wasn't specifically what it was that they were saying, but the ability to listen. To listen to you all and to learn from you. To be able to understand how we partner and what we do next. To listen to the unborn. To listen to the unborn. And they're asking us to make a way for them, as we've had a way made for us. And everything everybody says in every one of these sessions is equally important for us to find that way forward. I'm wanting to warrior up with you. I want us to be warriors for peace, so no more babies have to suffer. So no more war machines are greased with greed. So data centers can go away and we can use our own minds and not give them the freedom to gulp all the fresh water that's left and to dumb down humanity more than it already is. And more, and more, and more. But let's do it. Let's quit just talking about it. Let's go make plants grow that are waiting. Let's plant those seeds, not just of those ones, but the seeds of beauty that will give our unborn generations a place to be in this natural law, this natural world that we all are part of. Vivdahan.
Thank you so much, Casey. Those are words we all really needed to hear. Thank you very, very much. And I also want to thank everyone for coming to listen, because that's where it begins, listening. Thank you so much. So we're getting to the close of our event, and I really want to give a big applause to this panel. Before we go, I want to invite my dear friend and colleague Leila Salza Lopez from Amazon Watch, because there is you can't be organizers with doing some announcements, right, about a campaign in Ecuador. Please come up.
Thank you all for sharing and trying to collect my thoughts here because I was just crying. As any of you who know me know that I can get emotional, and especially with Casey's words. Your words reminded me of something we did together, Grandmother Casey, and I feel like we should bring it back. The Indigenous Women Defending Mother Earth Treaty. I feel like it's happening again here with, the women of the North and South coming together. So I recommit bringing it back with you all. I wanted to share that, just kind of in closing, that, we heard from so many powerful women and our sisters from the Amazon, our brothers and sisters from the Amazon are on the front lines fighting the continued extraction of indigenous lands. And as we go to Santa Marta, tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, many of us are going to be traveling down to call for a just transition, to call for a fossil fuel phase out, and declare the Amazon free from further extraction. We need to declare the Amazon Indigenous Peoples Territories exclusion zones. Indigenous Peoples Territories need to be free from extraction. And this is going to be one of the principal demands. In particular, in Ecuador, we have many brothers and sisters here at the UN who are here specifically to say no to new oil rounds. There are Indigenous Peoples Territories, over 3 million hectares, so nearly 8 million acres of Indigenous Peoples lands in Ecuador that the Ecuadorian government wants to auction off for new oil drilling. That's just talking about oil. They're also overlaid with mining concessions, as you heard from Josefina. So indigenous lands are right now extraction zones. They need to be exclusion zones. So we're going to be joining together. I know WECAN and Amazon Watch and the Fossil Fuel Treaty, and any and all of us should join together to say no more oil. And there will be a campaign launched in Santa Marta to say no more oil in the Amazon, and really to keep the Amazon and all indigenous territories free from extraction, because as we heard here, protecting indigenous lands means protecting life, protecting water, protecting forests for all of our future and our future generations. So thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. So we're definitely, one of our calls to action in Santa Marta is no extraction in the Amazon. Please help us when we support Indigenous peoples getting that message out on social media. That's something you all can do, is help us amplify. And I do hope that you will continue to follow up with all of these women. All of their information is on our website. You can support them financially. You can support them with social media. You can help them visibilize their work. Let's move into action. And as Casey said, we're going to warrior up. What are we going to do? Warrior up! Warrior up! Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you.